Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the November meeting of the Finance, Efficiency, Economy, and Sustainability Subcommittee. We do have Councilman Valenzuela on the phone, and Councilman Nowakowski will be in just a moment. So we'll go ahead and start this meeting like we start all meetings of the subcommittee with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Nowakowski, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All the members of the subcommittee were provided with copies of the minutes of the October meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have item 3, which is for information only. It's the Unified Print Project Update. Do we have any questions from my colleagues on this item? The one comment I would make is that I'm pleased to see this moving forward, and I also thought it was great to see in the report that the city has a moratorium on purchasing new printers and other devices while we're pursuing this. I think that's a best practice, and pleased to see this moving forward, which is going to lead to a lot of savings for the city of Phoenix. Next, we have item 4, which is a consent item. Unless we have any questions, do I have a motion on item 4?
Move to approve.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Again, this is a consent item, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously. That now takes us to item 5, which is for discussion and action. And item 5 is development of 2050 sustainability goals and targets. Mr. Neymark and Mr. Hartman, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and subcommittee members. We are really excited to be here to be talking about sustainability, sort of where we are in sustainability as a city and what we need to do to move ourselves forward. We were extremely lucky when we established this Chief Sustainability Officer position that we were able to recruit Mark Hartman to that position. Mark comes to us from Vancouver, Canada, which is arguably one of the top cities for sustainability in the world. But in particular, and you'll see on a list that he shows you later, they're ranked extremely highly among cities in the U.S. and Canada, and has really been a leader. Mark has had the opportunity now, since he arrived this summer, to do an assessment of our sustainability efforts, and there were some real highlights. We've done some good things, we made some good progress, but you'll also see that we have a long ways to go to be in that top tier of sustainable cities. And Mark has some recommendations for how to move us forward in that regard by setting some really important stretch goals in the sustainability arena. And we don't have those goals yet today, but we want to talk to you about the categories, the areas in which we'd like to do that. So I'll turn it over to Mark, and he's got a really good presentation that kind of sets the stage for you and helps put where we are into perspective.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, council members. This, as Rick described, this presentation is really looking at the long term of many factors when you consider how does Phoenix thrive in the long term. There's certainly always been a lot of attention from other cities on water as being our critical factor, but really there's many other considerations of how to think about cities and how we thrive in the long term. And on the graph here is kind of the environmental footprint of cities, and Phoenix really at 517 square miles is kind of the area you see that looks like a city there, that's all in gray. But actually, if we were a planet unto ourselves, we would actually need quite a lot more land in order to survive. That we get resources of all our produce and our meats and products and energy and resources and fish from the oceans, significant amounts of resources outside of that. In fact, looking at sort of the concept of environmental footprint from the 1990s, and the calculator is common today, that our environmental footprint is really 30,000 square miles of the land we would need in order to sustain us as a city. So when we think of long-term about policies and what our impact is and how we move forward, we really need to think about, wow, the role that we have and the impact that we have is really much broader than just what we think within our city limits. And the other consideration is thinking long term that some projections may say maybe double by 2050. If we're going to do that, then does that mean that the land that we need to sustain us as a city and to survive is even going to be 60,000 square miles? Will that also double the amount of resources that we need? Or do we think about the way we use and what our demands are and the amount of resources we need in order to move forward? So that's a really critical principle of sustainability, of how to think about it in the long term. And the other one is that the Carbon Disclosure Project they capture information from thousands of businesses and as well as hundreds of cities from around the globe and gather that information and kind of report on what's happening. And they produce annual reports on cities. And they actually interviewed 240 cities around the globe, including City Phoenix was on that interview list. And they actually said, what is the evidence in the last decade of, have you recorded any change in weather events over the last 10 years? And Phoenix certainly would have said yes. We've seen the temperature increase in heat waves. We've gone to 110 days now from 90 of days over 100 degrees, and our nighttime average temperatures have risen as well. We could certainly testify to the frequent and intensity of rainfall. And really interesting that of cities around the globe, not just even in the US, but around the globe, have actually 68% reported having a change in the frequency intensity of rainfall. So pretty interesting how that seems to be what we're experiencing here is experienced by all cities. And overall, all cities are seeing a change in all of these areas. And when you think about back to that environmental footprint, we think of that 30,000 square miles that's from abroad where our reach extends into many other areas, many other cities around the globe, that vulnerability of all of these particular incidents actually are to where we get our resources from. So it's for us to survive, we need to think about, wow, these impacts are not just how do we become resilient ourselves, but even where we're getting our resources from. So it's kind of the context piece. And the other one is that looking at really why do we do something as a city, that cities are, as former Mayor Bloomberg used to say, cities are where it's at and where it's happening. That as I've talked to counterparts in actually other countries around the globe, whether Germany or Sweden or even in China, that they're saying, oh, nothing's happening at the state and federal level. They say it's always dependent on us. And it's interesting that the same story around the globe is cities are really where all the action and goals are being set. And there's been a real change back from, I was around in the earlier days where everything was kept. Cities wanted to be first, and we keep everything a secret until it became policy, and then they tell everyone about how good they did. And now there's definite sharing of best practices, and saying even cities that haven't, they talk about work and wanting to do dual announcements and joining that sharing of best practices. And it's interesting. All the leading cities around the globe, and certainly in the U.S., are setting long-term sustainability goals and targets. In other words, when our residents and businesses wake up in 2050 and say, wow, what is this morning like, that they really want to say, what is it the city we want to see? So setting that goal and aspiration of really what our experience is to be like in that long term. And interestingly, one thing that being in the conversations back in the early 2000s was that the cities that were leading, and Vancouver had this conversation as we were talking about other cities like New York and Seattle and Portland, and we were all saying, wow, that to set these really ambitious goals of 80% reductions and to do these drastic things, it might actually cost our city a lot. We don't know how we're going to pay for this, but we need to set these goals. And they really thought that it was actually going to be an increased cost to these cities to do that. There was that sort of expectation of that gulp that was taken to say, what, it's the right thing to do. We have to do this. We have to be leaders. We're pioneers. Let's do this. And what they're actually discovering, those early ones, is actually a little bit of a windfall, and that they're realizing that businesses are wanting to locate to cities that are leading in sustainability for their expansion and relocation. I was at a presentation a couple weeks ago, and a vice president from HP said they screen cities where they want to open their new data centers and their new offices. They want to see that cities are sustainable because they're concerned about it as a business, and they want to know that their employees can commute sustainably. They want to see that the community is considering resiliency and that they're protected from shock events and things like that. So that's really important. Definite move in the global investment community, whether the huge $100 billion pension funds are looking to say, we want to see sustainability of the organizations we invest in, that we consider that as a competency of management practice, to really see that. And at the same presentation I was hearing, the VP of HP, a presenter from Moody's was there, and we just yesterday got our AAA1 credit rating, and that was great from Moody's, but the actual speaker there said they're getting lots of pressure from the investment communities to say, as we evaluate cities and rate cities, that we really need to consider how are those cities going to do in the long term, that if those cities are going to be viable in the long term, we want to know that they're thinking about how they're going to be and the resources they depend on in the future, and that they're really being strategic about how they do that. And lastly, probably the biggest one and the most surprise innovation to cities they're finding is that as they set these stretch targets and then put to the individual departments within the organization to say, okay, well, tell us how you're going to reach these in the long term. What are you going to do? And they're seeing that when they came up with plans to have 80% reductions in greenhouse gases, they actually found that the answers coming back often meant an 80% reduction in the way they do their business or in actual costs. And so seeing the significant reduction, they're a little bit surprised, like, wow, this is actually a really good thing. And I included some examples in the report of how even things that we've experienced here, even in Phoenix, and good examples is the state in the 1990s said, okay, cities need to have 50% of their fuels be alternate fuels by the turn of the century, and cities were going, oh no, I can't believe they're imposing this hardship on us. And Phoenix was actually a leader in actually jumping out first and doing this. And we really focused on compressed natural gas or CNG strategy. And actually that has meant a significant reduction in our fuel costs. Even as gasoline prices rose through the early part of the century, we actually had a bigger gap between CNG and had a significant savings. So our leadership in moving to alternative fuels, where 60% of our fleet is on alternative fuels now, we're actually seeing a price savings. And around ethanol, we thought, there's nobody supplies ethanol for our light-duty vehicles. We became our own mixer, and we could buy directly from distributors. It actually meant a reduction in costs. So we're actually able to buy fuel cheaper at all of the others compared to other surrounding cities, simply because we're trying to do this, meet this alternative fuel goal. So we've certainly seen that, some other examples there where we invest in these things.
And Mark, let me just interject. I think this is a great slide, and I think it speaks to the issue of sustainability. I don't think anyone would accuse me of being a leftist, but I chair this committee, and I believe in these issues, and I'm all for saving the world, but you don't even have to believe that global warming is occurring to support this, because it's dollars and cents. I mean, that's something that all of us up here can support, and I think that's why the city's been a leader. I think that's why you've seen a unanimous support of this council is, again, and I think your slide does a great job. It's about dollars and cents in these times of shrinking revenues. We need to look for all the change under the couch cushions, and this is a great way to do it. And at the same time, we're improving the environment, so it's a win-win.
No, certainly there's lots of attention on the triple bottom line, and the point of that was to say, wow, it's going to be an extra cost for some of those things, but yeah, as you see examples like this where it's actually a cost savings, it actually works out. It's a win-win, or win, I guess, if it's triple bottom line. And the Economist Intelligence Unit, they're the cat's meow of agencies that are rating. You want to be rated by them in terms of cities. You want to be studied by them. They're part of the Economist, and they've been around since 1946. And they rated 27 large U.S. and Canadian cities, typically the capitals, looking at them of how sustainable they are. And might even be my phone ringing. Isn't that interesting? Phoenix, when rating Phoenix, we actually met or exceeded the average of those 27 cities as far as sustainability goes. in our greenhouse gases, energy, and water. In greenhouse gases, we have primarily low carbon electricity, and as well for energy, we've done a great job, I think a pretty remarkable job as far as putting the amount of solar we've put in and other renewable energy products. And our water has had a 75-year head start on many communities. We've been thinking about that for a long time and have really shown great leadership in water. And our innovative projects like Tucson are really showing and leading the way in that. And however, we received a below average grade in 6 categories. So our land use, waste diversion, at the time this was done, we were 13% waste diversion. The U.S. average was 25% diversion, and leading cities.
Sorry for interrupting. And on that point, where are we at now, currently?
We're about 18%.
We're at 18%.
Yeah, so we're definitely improving, but we have some really great strategies coming forward. And leading cities, if you look at San Francisco, they're at 72% waste diversion. So really some speaks to, wow, we're doing a leapfrogging many cities by going to 40%, but then there's some great opportunities after that. And buildings around building codes and a number of LEED buildings, transportation, air quality, and environmental governance, we got lower than average scores. And to kind of look at it in a picture, the dark blue line here is you want to be as much of the outside as possible. And so the center is your 0. It means you're doing nothing. And so in the areas where kind of the medium color blue there is kind of the average of all the cities. So you can see the CO2, the energy, and water, we're kind of out where the average is. And we kind of fall short below cities in our buildings and green building codes and our transportation and certainly our environmental governance, which we're talking about primarily as a recommendation today.
And Mark, on this visual, where does energy efficiency efforts fall? Is that in buildings or energy?
It's a mix. So it kind of looks at both city energy efficiency, and we've actually been doing lots of retrofits. We're sort of good in that score. However, community-wide, we don't have any or limited community-wide programs with except Energize Phoenix, which has been very successful. So as we kind of have projects like that wasn't fully captured in this, but also number of LEED buildings in Phoenix, we're not actually don't have as many LEED buildings. We're about 18th in states as far as in the U.S. And really, being the 6th largest city, we should be up around 6th or something for a number of LEED buildings. And so on the full list, we actually came, the rank was 24th overall. I'd highlight in the report that despite being 24th, there's a really tight cluster from around 10 to 24, and that it really showed an opportunity that as we really do some things strategically and make some strategic moves, we can move very quickly up this chart. Certainly there are the leaders up front. The San Francisco, Vancouver, New York, Seattle are definite leaders there and far ahead, but a very tight cluster all the way from Chicago, who's known as a very sustainable city, to Phoenix. And so, so really some real opportunity there as well. So what some of those opportunities are is we already have some underway. The Plan Phoenix General Plan Update, a great best practice plan, and it's setting some midterm targets, and that will actually really position us well. Reimagine Phoenix was that kind of completed a $25 million energy upgrade that was awesome, and our newly announced bike share, things like that are great for transportation. We have under consideration some plans for 2015, and the one we're proposing today about setting some long-term targets would be another move that would really help us under the governance category.
So just to clarify, so literally setting the targets will improve our listing.
And so the principle of governance is that they say, well, what is any mandate that we have to actually do anything about climate change or about improving our sustainability around water, air quality? If we don't have any goals or targets, then it's saying you're lacking a governance structure. So they're saying by having those and having management work towards those goals, those are one step. That's one score. Actually doing actions is the other one you get points for. But anyway, they look at both policy and actual actions. So our recommendation to the subcommittee is for you to recommend to City Council, we direct staff to develop some 2050 sustainability goals in cooperation with stakeholders and the community to set those goals in all the areas that are considered the leading areas of sustainability throughout, accepted globally as the leading areas, such as air quality and air quality, water, transportation, the goals seen earlier.
And we would come back and recommend some specific goals or alternatives for goals in each one of those areas. But obviously, particularly the 6 areas in which we're way behind the average, we'd really want to focus on those to get us in the place where we can leapfrog up that list pretty dramatically. So,
Vice Mayor?
Could you go back to the slide? Thank you. Can you go back to the slide? It sort of looked like a star. It overlaid.
Yes.
I think you know what. Yeah, this one. So if I interpret that, we're kind of average on water and a little above average on energy. Is that right? And
Yes.
below average.
Correct.
Just if I interpret that.
That's correct.
I guess, I mean, this is fine. Having goals is great. I know, the last week or so, I think you met with at least one company that had specific ideas for right now about changing the light bulbs and water usage and so forth. How quickly can we act on suggestions from outside sources?
Quite a number of them. Like I certainly in here, I'd sort of given some things that we want to bring to even in 2015, just next year. Things such as there's a real opportunity retrofit. It's been talked about already to retrofit our street lights to LED. That is an opportunity, an economic opportunity, and some if that's certainly something we could bring forward. Looking at our building code of some really things that have 3-year paybacks, we should really have those within our new construction code. And for building energy benchmarking, where buildings actually look at how they rate to other buildings in the city of Phoenix, and looking at that, having building owners go through the free benchmarking software to really benchmark their buildings are really be important things.
So just to say the lights, if I may. So I mean, that's something, obviously we all know kind of what's involved, generally speaking, in changing a light bulb. This would be on a mass scale, but it can be done. I assume there's a capital outlay on our part, but the savings is pretty extreme, is my understanding, just like at home. I mean, if anybody reads the boxes on the lights you buy at Walmart or anywhere else. So what's preventing us from going forward? Is it finance, or, because you don't have to build anything else, you're just replacing stuff that's already there, and it's a pretty quick change.
So having been through and managed some of these projects as we go through, one of the challenges is, and I'll talk about it both as a challenge and an opportunity. I think sometimes you have to be pushed to think about that initial expenditure and its payback, because in tight budget times, you think about that initial expenditure only, and you tend not to focus on that it's going to save you a lot of money over 5 years or 10 years or even longer than that. And I think that's part of what Mark's point is that when you set an aggressive goal, it makes you start to blast through those initial levels of resistance. So, some of these outside the box ideas we have in solid waste have been coming because we set a goal. And people are very goal oriented when they come to work, and they tend to say, okay, I want to achieve and make progress toward that goal, or I want to get to that target. And so how do I do there? And you kind of break out of your basic model of thinking. Just since Mark has been here, people have been asking us about LED streetlights since Phil Gordon was mayor. And this mayor, and I know this councilman has been asking a lot about it. And Mark has actually worked with the staff to figure out how we're going to get to, I think, in 2015, a program to blast it through. But sometimes it's really hard to see over that initial investment hurdle, and that really is a tough thing when you're managing a budget. It's hard to get there. The other thing is, you got to do that capital outlay, and you don't have it budgeted necessarily. The payback doesn't come to the capital program. It generally will come to your operating program, which is obviously something we all care about. But sometimes when you're doing your day-to-day thing, just like at your house, you don't think, oh wow, I could save a lot of money if I did put a bunch of insulation in my house or changed out my windows to dual pane or whatever. And it just takes, you got to see it, staring you in the face, and you got to sort of think about how important that longer-term goal is and get through it. And that's really why we have Mark, because he's kind of trying to pull people along and help them see that benefit of those difficult hurdles.
So as you said, these lights have been around for a while. You referenced Phil Gordon. I mean, it's been several years. So do we have it on paper, how much it would cost, how much the savings would be? So at least you could present that to us, and,
Yep.
and then we can make a decision, because
Right.
obviously we are in a position where we can sort of force the issue,
Yeah.
should we choose. And in tough budget times, I would argue, you know, it helps even more because it frees up money a couple of years from now when our pension costs keep escalating and yada, yada, yada. You know, if we can bite the bullet for 1 year and make the capital outlay, then there is benefit really almost immediately.
Right. So with regard, yes, we will, and we will be bringing that forward. With regard to streetlights, we have an interesting story, and I think Councilman Gates knows this because he's asked about
Yes,
it
we do.
before. Our streetlight, the way in which we get charged for the electricity and the use of the poles, which are not ours, for streetlights, they're mostly owned by SRP or APS, is unusual and actually a very low rate structure. And so the annual savings in our rate structure is actually a lot lower than like LA or other places. And so the incentive to do it and the payback period in our first analysis was not as great as one might assume, and certainly not as great as other cities. But Mark has helped them kind of restructure and think about this in a different way, and I think we're going to have a much better set of numbers to look at when we present this to you coming up here very soon, probably in, I'm thinking, January. So
We also have, I mean, we're going to talk about the properties we own and everything, but we have thousands of lights in this building, thousands of lights at the airport, or tens
Yeah.
of thousands at the airport.
there's
I mean,
a
it's not
lot
just
we can
street
do.
lights. I mean,
There's a great opportunity at like the Terminal 4, still you know, you come out of when you think of the Super Bowl coming out of the airport and seeing those yellow parkade, and there's actually a good business case to retrofit that building as well. And so some real opportunities, and it's that access to capital of where does that come from and where we, if we need to go to a bond to ask people for that, even though it means a decrease in we can actually lower our general fund requirements that, if for LED streetlights, perhaps up to $1 million, we could lower our general fund by a year, which is a great benefit to us. But the question is, we need to have that authority to go and borrow that fund or use some other source for that. And so lots of competing priorities for that.
is the same thing Rick talked about, is it not, is that what you just mentioned about the potential payback being less than you might expect, is that the same for the or for the lights at the airport and this building and so forth? Okay, so that was simply a street light issue.
Right, that was the streetlight issue, and that was the one that we've really been working on for at least 4, 5, 6 years, and just haven't found a way. We actually did a report on it, and the report just showed it didn't make sense in our initial analysis. But I think we've got an updated way of looking at it, and we think we're going to be able to move forward with a plan. We're still kind of vetting it through the finance and budget folks and making sure that the analysis makes sense on that particular issue. But with the buildings, there's a lot we can do. And actually, not the Energize Phoenix grant, but the federal stimulus grant that we got prior to that, which was about a $15 million grant, gave us a lot of money to do a lot of improvements to our buildings to save energy. We have made huge improvements over the last few years, mainly due to federal infusion of money for that particular use, because you don't have to worry about the payback as much if somebody else is paying for it, even though they obviously would only invest in things that had a good payback. So we've done a lot of retrofit of our buildings, not our lighting systems as much, but things like the chillers, more efficient chillers, painting white roofs, some window change-outs and things like that have really helped the bottom line.
I would say, I mean, I guess my last comment, I know it helps the bond rating and everything, and I'm the saver at home. I try to sock money away for a rainy day, all this stuff that makes me cheap. I like to think lovable, but cheap, certainly, for sure. But I guess we sock money aside too every year in our budget. I'll just call it the rainy day fund, because that's what they do at the state. It's a term that's sort of understandable for people. But we don't sock away enough money to actually help that much. I mean, I think what we've got now lasts maybe a couple weeks or something if things really went kaput again. In some ways, I almost think doing less of that and investing some of that money in this savings going forward, which has benefits year after year after year after year, might be something you at least want to think about. I mean, I don't know if there's somebody, I don't know if it's him or whoever who might run those numbers and just see what makes sense long term. Might just want to think about that. So.
We'll certainly review that idea. I don't think the city manager and the finance director or the CFO are excited about reducing the contingency fund.
I understand.
But I think more likely, putting into our CIP and our annual in the operating budget, we have pay-as-you-go capital, bumping that up, which then will save on operating dollars over several years, is definitely a smart investment. And maybe we can borrow a little from you too. It sounds like you've got a lot sucked away.
Not enough to make a difference.
Councilman Nowakowski has been very patiently waiting, Councilman.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for those great comments. I just really want to thank you, March, for your approach in establishing these goals. One concern I have is we need to find that happy balance when we're trying to attract businesses, especially to Phoenix. And is there any type of incentives, or is there any way that we can kind of do both, right, and find that happy medium where businesses don't see it as a detraction, but it's a welcoming approach where we're here to help, we're here to save you future energy bills, and how do we do that business approach also and keep it in a happy medium balance, right?
I mentioned those goal areas accepted by cities. One of them is actually around the economy, the green economy, and how to really stimulate economic activity. And having a thriving economy is really important. And actually, as you do many of these projects, say even LED streetlights, it actually not only is good economically for the bottom line, but it actually creates jobs and does those things. So as you're doing these retrofits, you really get that win on the economy side. At the same time, you're having a pocket savings, or if you look at a green building that saves energy in the long term, you're actually spending more jobs in building those buildings, and it actually adds effort to it, and it's actually saving money. So you get kind of the win on both sides.
Great comments from my colleagues. Councilman Valenzuela, any comments you would have on this item?
I think it's exciting. I think Mr. Neymar hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of these ideas outside the box thinking comes because staff is challenged, and we're fortunate, and this is another example, fortunate enough to be a city and an employer to attract a lot of great talent. And when we ask our staff to do something, when they are basically when they're mandated to do something, like research programs like this, they're going to deliver. And I think that we, on one hand, we're fortunate to have talent. Another, we have to be willing also to listen and this is what it's going to take for us to get to the next level. And there's definitely, we're not flush with cash, but there is a difference between a cost and an investment. And this subcommittee, I don't think there are no greater examples than the examples coming out of this subcommittee. And that's a credit to you, Chairman, and also every member that has served on it as well. And there's no greater example than, investments. And sometimes it's all about a cost savings, and sometimes it's about a very strong investment. So it's exciting, and I'm in support here.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I might, at this point, maybe if you don't mind, I'd like to make a motion on this, see if there's a second, and then we can move forward to recommend staff to develop the sustainability goals for 2050. But then as well, I think there was a great discussion about maybe a stretch goal in the very near term as it relates to the airport, and trying to get something accomplished before the Super Bowl to see what could be done, with an emphasis on the fact that we're very sensitive to the capital up front that might be required, so looking at innovative ways where we might be able to avoid that capital expenditure. I don't know if there'd be a second to that.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that?
Just with your caveat that, I'd like to see some specifics, as soon as possible, simply because some of this stuff has been sort of lingering for years. I mean, it's not like, some of this stuff isn't really new technology now. It's been out there, and we should be utilizing it.
Wonderful. Any other comments? All right, with that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. City
I
Manager.
just wanted to do two things. Number one, thank this subcommittee because you had the vision for a chief sustainability officer. Even in times when we were reducing other things, we kept this in mind, and I think this shows why it was important for that position and that Mark was the right person for that position. And so that really is a tribute to you guys keeping us focused on that. The second thing I'd add to Vice Mayor's comment is this subcommittee has worked on something that actually fits that mold, which was, and might be a pattern. Last year, the Parks Department did a lot of work with saving water. They did it just through elbow grease, not through a lot of technology, and they saved money. Rather than taking all that savings and cutting the budget by that amount, we came to you all and we got agreement that we would reinvest part of that savings into technology that would make it easier to spread water saving through more of the Parks Department. That's probably a model that is most effective for us. Is if we're going to save $1 million on something, let's save $750,000 and invest $250,000 in the technology that helps us. So, and that's something that came through this subcommittee as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. If my colleagues don't mind, I'd like to jump a little bit out of order here. If we could jump to quickly to number 9, excess city-owned property update, if we're prepared for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll ask Mr. Young and his staff. We also today have streets and parks are up to talk about the opportunities there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
morning.
members of the subcommittee. We're here to provide our monthly update on our asset disposal. There have been some good things happening, and we continue to work with city departments to identify possible assets that are considered excess and are available for sale. With that, I'm going to ask Deputy Director Mary Vivian Withrow to walk us through the next couple of slides. Mary?
Thank you, Neil, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here again. I'll just very briefly and let our colleagues in Streets and Parks run the show here today because they have some exciting things to present as well. But I'll run through where we stand as of today with property sales. Of the 17 parcels that the City Council has approved for disposal, we have sold 10. You'll note that 7 of those are relatively small transit parcels, 1 large police parcel, a water parcel that was fairly large, and then a street transportation parcel. So we've been very successful in a relatively short time in getting those properties marketed and sold. We also have properties in escrow totaling $775,000 that we expect to close on by January. Things continue to move. We have other contracts out at this point, so I credit Jones Lang LaSalle in their marketing efforts, and we continue to push the time frames and market these things as quickly as we can. And to that point, I will now turn it over to Keeney Knudsen from Streets to talk a little bit about where Streets is in their property analysis and what we may expect in the future.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee. To talk about the streets parcels that we're looking at, we've been working with the real estate division of the finance department for several months now and identifying what parcels Streets is responsible for, and together we've identified a little over 1,000 parcels around the city that are the responsibility of the street transportation department. But as we've gone through and looked at those parcels, the vast majority of them are tied up in either right-of-way or drainage or irrigation needs around the city. But as we went through that list, we were also able to identify preliminarily approximately 86 parcels that we think that are available for potential disposition. And the one thing to note about those when we're looking at those 86 parcels is that some of them were purchased for different means and purposes. Some are dealing with federal aid projects potentially. Some may have been bought for different purposes. So for us to be able to go through and look at those 86 parcels, it does take a little bit of time. So we're expecting to be able to complete our review by January of next year and be able to give a final answer to the finance division. I'm sorry, the Finance Department Real Estate Division on what we will be able to dispose of from ours. But I just wanted to go through a quick, just a look at some of these 86, not all 86, I won't go through those today, but just a few of these parcels just to show kind of what we're looking at when we're looking at the parcels that are available for disposition. This first one here, 55th Avenue in Thomas, is just a corner piece.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So these are going to be examples of the 86?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
This is one northwest corner of 55th Avenue in Thomas, and as you can see, it was mostly probably bought. As we go through this process, we'll be identifying exactly why we bought these. But you can see from the aerial that we bought it for street improvements to complete out a street. But instead of doing a partial take on the parcel, we did a full take. But as we look at it, our right-of-way lines don't go all the way, or don't need to go all the way to the extent of this parcel. So what we would look at doing is taking a piece of that we need for right-of-way, and the remaining parcel we would look to be able to dispose as we can.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So
Vice
just
Mayor.
using this one as an example, I mean, it was purchased in is that right, 1977?
Yes.
So almost 40 years ago, somebody at the city thought it was necessary for, I guess, a bigger road or a better road. And 40 years later, I mean, how do those evaluations come to pass? Because it seems like that evaluation was, I guess, clearly wrong. We're here 40 years down the road, and we're talking about just dumping it.
Mr. Chair and Vice Mayor Waring, in this one case, if we're looking at widening out the road, which obviously
I should add, since you look like you're probably about 40 years old, I'm not actually blaming you. I'm assuming it was not your decision, Ken, so
The Chair,
I was very
Vice
quick.
Mayor, I would guess with you, what might have happened here was where the house was situated on the parcel that they bought to widen the road to where it is today, made it such that the property owner didn't want to live 3 feet from the sidewalk. And so we've done this on the light rail on 19th Avenue. There are cases where we will just buy the complete property because the quality of life of living that close to the expanded road doesn't exist. And so we end up with parcels like this.
So there might have been a house there at one time or something.
Mr. Knudsen may know the details.
And that's probably exactly right, because it is a parcel, and you look at around the rest of the neighborhood, it was most likely had a house on it. But when you look at this, the reason why it sat this way, probably for close to 40 years, is because when you have a full take like this and you don't subdivide it out to where you're going to need your right-of-way limits, when you go through the process administratively and working with the real estate division on this, it does take money to be able to go and survey and go through a administrative process to be able to dispose of the parcel. And that's putting money on top of what we've already spent to acquire the land preliminarily. So, but as part of the success parcel process and evaluation process, we're looking at ways that we can, collect all these together, and maybe there's ways that we can lower our administrative costs to be able to still go through that process, because we're still going to have to delineate this piece of property into what right-of-way we're going to need for the continuation of operation and maintenance of the street there, but also, obviously, there's a portion of this we're not going to need for streets purposes, and we'd open to be able to dispose of that as best we
So
can.
if we can dispose of it, I mean, it's hard to tell how big it is. Like, I didn't realize that was a house. I guess I'm looking at I assume that's probably the west side of the property. So what could, I mean, nobody's going to want to live there. Or I said probably bulldozed a house that might have been there before. So what's it's big enough to put what there? I mean, who would buy it to do what with it? Is that something we're still evaluating, or?
Yeah, and sorry, Mary.
Well, no, Vice Mayor and Mr. Chairman and committee, I think the challenge here is, this is emblematic of the challenge we faced all along, which is the city makes decisions that are at the time very economically sound, and that is if you're displacing someone and leaving them with an uneconomic remnant, the damages you would pay in that acquisition far exceed the decision to just buy the whole parcel. The city's better off economically for having made that decision. And that happens in a number of cases. But then you're faced with the challenge of that remnant, and Streets needs to be sure that they are proactively thinking about what their future needs may be, because we have previously encountered situations where we've too quickly disposed of a remnant and we need more property and we end up buying back the same property over and over. So it really is a balancing act. And when you're left with these uneconomic remnants, you're correct. The market for those, a number of the transit parcels we disposed of, those are not high dollar parcels. Someone may buy this for some small commercial purpose, or there might be somebody who wants to expand their yard, so the abutting property owner.
So there's enough space to do that.
Correct, but you are absolutely correct that this is at the heart of the challenge we face with these remnant parcels.
I would certainly hope that after almost 40 years, we won't sell it and then suddenly decide we need it for something. So
That's
think
our-
long and hard.
that's our hope as
Reflect
well.
on that before we actually get rid of it. Thank you.
Councilman Nowakowski.
And with that point, Vice Mayor, yesterday we were talking about bike lanes and making our city more bike-friendly. In the future, do you think there might be a bike lane and we might use some of this property? So if we sell property, can we keep that into consideration and maybe keeping some type of,
Mr. Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, that's something exactly as part of our analysis. We're going to make sure that whatever we're going to be allowed to be disposed of, and when we set our right-of-way limits there, it accommodates whatever we're planning for the future for the street cross-section.
thank you.
Great point.
Another parcel here, and this is up on the SR 51, as part of the process that was to be able to buy the right-of-way there. This is a parcel that was formerly a residential piece of property, but obviously its portion is needed for right-of-way to continue right-of-way there. But also we have a portion there that's not something we need for street purposes. And so it is the kind of, like I said, conundrum that we're in when we're looking at these parcels that were acquired for different projects. Another one, this is along Highland Avenue, up in the 19th Street and 18th Street area. A long string of parcels that were purchased here, most likely for a roadway job or a future project that happened. And this is something we've looked now, and we don't have a need for street purposes for this. Obviously, it was purchased more than 20 years ago. So this is on the list of properties that we're looking at for potential disposition. And then finally, here's another one, 41st Place in San Gabriel Avenue. Looks like another former residence, and obviously it's not needed for street transportation purposes, so another one that, as we've gone through this review process, that can definitely be cleared off the books for the street transportation department.
And just a clarification on these then, in all of these instances, would these be an RFP, or how would we move forward with these?
Mr. Chairman, we would go through the revised process that the subcommittee looked at and approved relative to our additional parcels, that as we approve them as excess, we would be talking with the relative council districts about possible uses or concerns they might have. And then from there, we would either go through an RFP process or we would be going directly to the broker to market them.
Thank you. This is great to be able to see these parcels, and I would assume for people who are watching to get to see these parcels, but I think what would really be great is that the map that you demonstrated for us recently, that our residents can go on that map, especially the professionals, real estate professionals can go on there. Are we at the point now where that's available to the public and they can access that through phoenix.gov?
We are not insofar as Homeland Security has not yet given us full clearance to do that. We've pulled back the water parcels, but Homeland Security has asked that they be allowed to do another review with the law department prior to giving us the green light, because they do have serious concerns and I think want to take another look at it. But we have indicated to them that there is some urgency and that the community is anxious to see this, so we hope to get that rolling quickly.
This will be online by January.
Okay.
I'm going to give Homeland Security their deadline, which I think they need.
All right.
And so by January, it'll be up.
Excellent.
Can I ask?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So the Highland, I drive by it all the time, so I had not realized that was city-owned property. So that looked like it was broken up, if you go back to that. So is that just a bunch of different parcels?
Yes. Yes,
So
Vice Mayor.
if you went to sell it or something, do you have to sell them separately? I mean, it might be worth something to somebody if you do it all together.
Yeah, precisely. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Yes, Jones Lang LaSalle would advise us. They'll look at these and look at our marketing options and decide in what combinations. Does the entire assemblage enhance the value? Is there some combination of 2 or 3 here and there that give you the
You have
maximum
that, you
value?
have that option.
So we'll do the analysis and probably, yes, there would probably be assemblage of some or all of these parcels.
And if you put this on the map, I assume it's like A, B, C, or whatever. Are they listed? Will they be listed all together? Will somebody goes to a map, will they see them all together, that's an option? Because I would just imagine that somebody might be interested in all of it, as opposed to like the first one, the fifth one.
They will probably be, if you look at the map, they will still show the parcel lines because the city will likely not go through the replat process because that takes staff time and expense. So they will still be individual parcels, but we will note in any solicitation or marketing that they may be fully assembled.
And just before I finish up, as I mentioned, going through 1,000 parcels took a great deal of time and effort, and we want to make sure with the remaining 80-plus parcels that we're doing complete our due diligence to make sure, because if they were purchased with any funds other than local city funds, we want to make sure that there's no requirements that us to fund back to a federal or regional agency for the cost of those of any revenues that we may get out of disposing of properties.
The other thing I would just add here, this is a great example of where you may want to do an RFP. If you'll stay back at that one, this one might even too, but as you can imagine, the neighbors backing onto that for the last 23 years have had what looks to be sort of open space, and converting that without any conversation or dialogue would probably raise a lot of concerns. What we did with one neighborhood across the street from one of the properties we sold, so there would need to be significant neighborhood involvement with this sort of thing. That means that it takes us longer to sell things maybe than the private sector because we have that responsibility to work with them. So I think this actually illustrates a lot of interesting points of things we have to consider as we look at disposal.
Can I ask just is there anything in the notes about what that was there? I mean, was that houses there that were now too close to the road, or? Because I mean, we don't have the whole stretch, so we couldn't widen the road all the way to the freeway, which is just to the west. I mean,
At this point,
it's an odd piece of property for us.
That's something we're going to, as we finish our process, because once we look at the date, I mean, the date can probably say something about what we were doing at the point in time and what we were purchasing it for. It could have been from some major east-west project. Never got completed.
Okay, so we also have a presentation on the parks properties, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Similar to what Kenny just mentioned, we've gone through now and looked at all the park parcels and wanted to give you an overview and drill down to where we are today and what our next steps will be. And so we're one of your biggest property owners in the city, and we have 1,500 individual parcels and about 43,000 acres of land in its entirety. The biggest portion of that, of course, is our 3 different preserve systems: South Mountain Park Preserve, the Phoenix Mountain Preserves, and the new Sonoran Preserves. That totals 814 acres, or individual parcels, excuse me, for 33,000 acres of land. These, as you know, are all protected by the city charter, cannot be sold without a vote of the electorate. So we wanted to go through that with the real estate division and the consultant, make sure they understood that, and the council. And these are probably not parcels we're going to spend any other time looking at for disposition. You know how the community is rapidly supportive of the preserves. The next piece is the 9 desert park parcels that are very much like the preserves. We manage them exactly like the preserves, 151 individual parcels for 3,800 acres. But these don't have that charter protection, and that is really just a policy decision by the council that could be added to these. But things like Camelback Mountain and Papago Park, very unlikely we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that with the community or the council to do a sale. So when we back those out, we end up with 192 park properties. These are the developed parks, like Encanto Park, ones you've recognized in your community, Roadrunner Park or Cesar Chavez Park in your council districts. There's 512 individual parcels for 4,400 acres. So we get down to having 25 undeveloped park sites, 51 individual parcels for 728 acres that we've been evaluating. Of those, 15 are properties that were acquired with impact fees. So as Kenny was mentioning, we're starting to look at the reason we bought it, the source of funds we bought it, are there any restrictions on that? And with all the changes in impact fee law, we do need to go through an analysis on that if there's any exposure or risk to the city if we should make a sale of some of these parcels. That leaves a balance of, well, we have the one site, this Del Rio landfill, which is a large parcel on the river that is a closed landfill that we have a plan for a park on it, but haven't implemented that plan. In the past, we've done a number of RFPs with Community and Economic Development and tried to have private development come in and take over and run that parcel. Have been unsuccessful in implementing that for a lot of reasons, most of them the economics of the site and the cost of dealing with the landfill. That brings us to the 9 parcels then, or 51 acres of undeveloped park sites that we're analyzing currently. They are primarily in the southwest quadrant of the city in the Levine area. We've talked to Councilman Nowakowski about these a lot. We've been working with the Parks Board. We've got a policy in place on looking at and evaluating those for disposition. We tried to take 2 of them out this last summer, and there were some issues with that, so we're reevaluating that policy, working with the board, and we'll be going back to them with some details, because some of these were bought adjacent to school sites or adjacent to a trail system or a drainage system, or there's some community expectation, as the manager was just saying on the street parcels. We need to do the community process and discussion on those before we can make the final determination. But one that we have talked to the council about are these excess parcels at Camelback Ranch, which are out on the very far west side of the city, next to the baseball complex that was built by Glendale, but in the city of Phoenix. We acquired those for City Park a number of years ago. We have built the park now across the street here at 107th Avenue. Right here, so we built this park, so these parcels are excess. We're working with the manager's office and talking to at the council's direction, the big adjacent property owner that owns this piece and some land on the other side of the river there to look at values and assemblage of all that. And then we expect to complete our analysis and have finished our conversation with the Parks Board on these remaining parcels, and we'll be coming back to you with some detail early next spring.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Councilor Nowakowski.
You know, just some clarification, because I think that the process of selling a parks property is way different than the process of selling other owned city properties. Can you explain the reason behind that?
Well, I think, and ultimately it's a council decision because it is still an asset of the city, but as you are aware from the previous ones we tried this summer, there are community expectations. There are some of these parcels were acquired through donations. They were done through zoning cases. Some have restrictions on them, some do not. Some have underlying zoning. They are actually zoned as open space, or some of them have zoning as R16 or R110 development. That's one of the potentials we're looking at. And then we have the Parks Board charter authority to look at the use of park property. So there's just one extra step in there, is dealing with the Parks Board, getting their recommendation to you all at the council level on a parcel and whether or not it's appropriate for community use and sale. But the disposition, I believe, is the council's call.
But isn't it that, isn't there a process? I mean, there's several processes. If somebody wants to buy a piece of property from a parks property that they have to go through.
Yes, they've adopted a policy this last year for going through a number of steps, mostly about community notification and involvement to make sure that, one, there's no deed restrictions, the source of the monies of which we bought it, and then talking to the community about their interest in that parcel or their willingness to consider it for sale, and then the Parks Board decision about the appropriateness of that, and then rolling forward to council. And we're looking at modifying that to try to streamline it, but it is a policy that's in place, yes, sir.
Now, is there a way to have the same type of policy throughout all city lands? So, I mean, it gets confusing when you're out there trying to purchase a piece of property from the housing, then you go to the parks, and then we have all these different policies of purchasing property for the city of Phoenix. Is there a way that we can actually come up with a single policy for all city properties, knowing that there is restrictions of how they're purchased and that we have to reimburse those funds, and if it is federal grants and all that, that there are those restrictions. I understand that, but it's the process that I think is confusing for individuals.
As Chairman Gates, Councilman Nowakowski, certainly the policy is set by the council ultimately on how we do this. So if the council would like to move to a uniform policy that mirrors the Parks Department policy, we can certainly bring that back for discussion.
Or that mirrors the other departments. I think it's something that this committee should really look at, which is the easiest and at the same time protects the neighborhoods, and it's an easy process instead of having individuals go through all these different loops that they have to jump over hoops, right?
I think the one difference is, as Mr. Burke said, there is some charter authority that rests with the Parks Board that they have to exercise as they see fit. And I think that's what's happened here, is the Parks Board has a process for itself before they would recommend to the council disposal. Outside of that, every other department would follow the same uniform policy, which has already been adopted by the council.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else on this item? This is just information only, so thank you very much for your work on this and look forward to further updates in the near future. All right, let's jump back then to item 6, network and telephone system upgrades.
Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee, we're here today to discuss with you the reinvestment in the city's data network and phone system, and staff will be recommending conceptual approval of the project and authorization to fund the project through a mix of potential resource options. With me today are Neil Young, CFO, Debbie Cotton, CIO, and J.R. Simmons from the COM Group, who is the city's communications and technology consultant for this project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Debbie.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. We'd like to begin by just talking about the simple fact that this project consists of 3 important aspects. The first aspect being the fact that we need to upgrade our internal network in several of the city buildings, the phone system itself, and then the financing aspect of the project. The reality is that our phone system and our network are both obsolete. Whether it's the phone system standing by itself, it was developed in 1988. The network was built in this building when it was erected in 1993, and together they're out of date. The telephone system, I think we've already been through this, but just really want to kind of cover some of the important aspects I think you might want to know is that our system is, of our size, it's one of only 12 Ericsson systems in the United States of similar size and scope to ours that are still in working order or are still existing and functioning. And it's my understanding that all of those systems are in some phase of being replaced at this time. It's important also to understand that based upon the fact that we are at the end of manufacturer support, we can no longer get original equipment parts, that the system is at risk. If anything breaks in the system, if anyone wants to do any move, adds, or changes, or if we're fortunate enough to be able to ever expand, we don't have the capability to do so just because of the age of the technology. The network, once again, we must rewire the buildings in the organization. There really is no option, and we must have cash in hand in order to do this. Wiring the building is basically a construction project where we'd have to go into all the closets and you're literally physically pulling out wire and reinstalling new wire. So it really is not a lease option. A large majority of the equipment, well over 85%, is at the end of life. And what that means from a technology perspective is that the manufacturer will no longer support those items. We will no longer be able to get software updates, which will once again place this infrastructure at risk for failure. The good thing about it is that upgrading the network will provide us with a path forward, provide us with options. And we'll have to do that through a competitive request for proposal options. Some of the options that we could have in the future that have been mentioned by this body are mobile devices. I've heard several of you say, why can't I use my smartphone? Why can't I use my tablet? With the network infrastructure that we have today, we can't do that just because the cabling standards have changed in order for us to be able to do that. Our current network really won't support that as an option. I also understand video conferencing. It's an option. It could be of some importance. Our existing infrastructure will not support that type of technology. The phone system. Now, this is an option where it could be, we could buy it or we could lease it. It would just really depend upon what we hear from the marketplace. But we must go through a competitive procurement process. We must go out to the marketplace and see what the experts tell us is possible. We don't have any preference to technology. We want to know what the market says. We don't have a preferred vendor. There are many vendors in this technology space that could provide these types of services for us. It's also interesting to know that between the phone system and the telephone system, we could have several vendors in play. We could have one vendor that does the cabling, another vendor that provides the technology equipment for the network, and we could have a third vendor that provides for the telephone system, and a fourth vendor that does the integration. So there's lots of really competitive opportunities here for the private sector to compete. In terms of how we will pay for it, it really will depend upon the total cost of ownership, and that is information that we will receive once we have heard from the marketplace and once we are able to issue the RFP and get those results back. We don't know what the total cost of ownership is at this time. The $35.6 million that we refer to, those are really our best estimates that we've received from our consultants and what the marketplace is showing us, depending upon other organizations of our size. And at that time, we'll be able to explore lease versus debt, once we know what the project will consist of. We're into the financing aspect now, so I'll turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Young.
Thank you, Debbie. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. On this slide, you can see the estimates for the network upgrade and the purchase options and the financing options. You can see the network upgrade of $16 million. The really only option there is to buy that cabling. It has to be installed. And so that is really a debt service option. In addition, as Debbie mentioned, the telephone system, the actual hardware and software, that could be lease or buy, and that could be supported by a vendor or debt service. And I believe the RFP for the telephone system will provide the best options for that. And then finally, we have professional services and contingency funds. Really, those are going to be things that the professional services, of course, that's a buy. We're not going to be able to lease those. And the contingency is something that would also require cash on hand. So the financing option there is primarily debt service. On the next slide, you can see the estimates between enterprise funds costs and the general funds costs. Overall, the general fund cost is estimated to be at 60%. On the next slide, this identifies a future City Council review and action. One of the things that I think is really important to mention here is that this spring, the Finance Department is going to be refinancing and refunding certain amounts of excise tax debt. There is a current estimate of a present value savings of about $50 million tied to that refinancing and refunding. We all know also that the market is getting a little anxious about interest rates. So we know, based on some analysis, that the March-April timeframe is absolutely going to be our best window, most likely. Who knows what's actually going to happen, but appears to be historically the best window for us to be able to issue and price excise tax debt. And what we're attempting to do is move this schedule in such a way that any debt that needs to be issued for the telephone project, as well as the refunding, all coming together and most efficiently occurring in the late April, early May timeframe. That will provide us the lowest total cost of doing that transaction, the greatest amount of refunding savings, and likely the lowest interest rates for the telephone project, the new money tied to the telephone project. I think a lot of analysts are expecting interest rates to start to rise in the third quarter of fiscal year 15. Others anticipate interest rates could rise starting in the first quarter. The sooner we can get this project to the marketplace, the more likely we are to generate the types of savings that we're hoping for. In addition, authorization here today does not necessarily mean that we have to issue bonds in the future. What we're seeking is your recommendation to council to give the finance department the authority to issue excise tax bonds. In the spring, in March and April, we can determine the exact amount of the issuance that would be tied to this project. And at the same time, we'd be able to prepare all of our documents, prepare our bond counsel, prepare underwriter counsel for the possibility that these bonds for the telephone project would be included in that refunding. So again, it's by far the most efficient, most likely the lowest total cost, and we can pull out any telephone-related project bonds that we want to with a couple of weeks' notice before we go to the marketplace. You can see on the schedule here, we would come back to fees with an excise tax bonds update in February. You can see also in March, the project would be reviewed with the task force on technology advancement. In April, we would be asking fees, consideration of the RFP results, asking fees to determine the extent to which the excise tax bonds would be issued for the telephony project. And then also in April, we would be issuing our preliminary official statement. And then ultimately in April, request full council consideration of the RFP results and recommendation to award. And at the end of April and beginning of May, we would price the excise tax bonds in the marketplace in order to achieve, again, the most efficient and what we would believe to be the most cost-effective bond issuance.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, staff recommendation, we are seeking conceptual approval of the telephone system and network upgrade project and to authorize the city to move forward with debt service only as necessary. And that concludes our presentation, and we're available to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from my colleagues? Okay.
Vice Mayor, I have something.
Yes, please, Councilman.
I think the City Council has been prudent in making the current system last as long as possible. I think it's time to make sure that we have the tools necessary to provide the effective services to the public, and I think that's going to take proceeding now so that we have enough time to actually make that replacement. I believe it's necessary to be as efficient as possible internally for our city employees and for our customers, the residents of Phoenix, the people that we are all here to support and to serve. As I mentioned before, the city of Phoenix has done as much as they possibly could, as much as we possibly could with the current system, and it's time to make a change here. Staff has proposed a schedule and options that retain flexibility for the council and for this subcommittee. And this is a great city. We're all biased. I think we're more than biased. I think it's a true statement. This is the greatest city in the world. This is a city in which I was born and raised. I'm very passionate about. We all are, and we claim to be this forward-thinking city, and the city where we are attracting others to come to and to plan their families and their businesses, and the reason we ask them to do this. I mean, I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I've spoken to throughout the country, many of which I believe will be coming to Phoenix, and a lot of it has to do because Phoenix is this forward-thinking city. And if they were to listen to this presentation and if they were to hear the infrastructure that we currently have, and that would concern me, frankly. And so anyway, I think this is long overdue, but I do believe that the benefit of it, of slowing this down as we have in the past, is to just assure that we are getting the most bang for the buck, which is also our fiduciary responsibility, I think we've done that, and I would move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve staff recommendation. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you for those comments, Councilman. I have a few questions about this. Neil, you mentioned the excise tax refinancing that will occur for, you anticipate about 50 million?
I anticipate, Mr. Chairman, using today's interest rates, a present value savings of $50 million.
Are you in a position to opine, approximately what type of savings we would have from a financing perspective as a result of that refinancing? What our debt service, what the decrease in the debt service would be to the city of Phoenix?
Mr. Chairman, based on the estimates that I've seen, I would anticipate the debt service to decrease starting in year 2 of the refinancing to be about $2.5 million per year over the remaining life of those bonds.
Now, I'm convinced after a lot of questioning of a lot of the people sitting here, more than they probably wanted to do, that we do have to make this spend for the network upgrade. We are absolutely up against the wall. I don't like it. I don't want to have to do it, but we have to continue to do what we do in the city, because we have absolutely reached a point of obsolescence. So, having said that, so that's about 16 million. The 2.5 million in savings that will occur from this refinancing, is that all in the general fund, or is that divided up?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that these are excise tax bonds, and they are primarily funded with excise taxes. So it would be primarily general fund dollar savings.
Okay, so the 16 million, again, this is just for the cabling. This is the infrastructure that we have to do. Thank you. So the 16 million, if you can show the slide that has the breakdown between general fund, so that's about it's about 9.6 million then that we would be financing for the infrastructure itself.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we would probably finance the entire 16 million with the enterprise funds paying about $6.4 million of those financing costs.
Right. And what would if we take full, if we ended up financing all of this, so the infrastructure, the hardware, everything, so you have about 21 million cost to the general fund. Again, rough numbers, sorry to ask you to do this math on the fly here, but rough numbers, what would debt service be on an annual basis for that, for the 21 million?
Mr. Chairman, we would have to break out that $21 million over estimated useful life, and that certainly impacts the amount of debt service. About $3.6 million per year general fund.
Okay. So 3.6, so we'll be saving 2.5. We would be taking on an additional 3. So taking on about an additional $1 million in change a year in debt service, and that gets us a telephone computer system that we can operate for. And as I look to the consultant, what's a good estimate on the number of years that we'd be able to get? I know I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball, but sort of what's the industry standard these days?
As a platform decision, it's something that we easily see a 8 to 12-year life on it. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be some additional reinvestment, but it's typically a small component compared to what you're looking at now.
So I guess for me, when I look at those numbers and kind of break that all out, again, I don't like to spend money, but I think it's a spend that we have to do, and I think you're putting this together in a reasonable way. Again, I would hope that number can be even less, that perhaps the lease approach is the way to go. But I think with the motion that's been made, it gives you all the ability to look into this, to drill down into this further, to determine what makes the most financial sense for the city of Phoenix. And again, the only reason I'm going to be voting in support of this is because technology we have to do this. It's such a priority that's been established by this council, and it's also a priority that we've heard from the community via the Technology Summit. Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski, for calling for that, along with Councilman DeCiccio. Very positive event last week. And I'm happy to see as well that this whole approach is going to go back to the technology task force to get their take on this, because we are fortunate to have these experts assembled in this committee. So we definitely want to look to them in addition to the other experts that we have on board to come up with the best approach. Really, we are laying the groundwork for many years and positioning the city of Phoenix as a leader in technology. So with that, any other comments from my colleagues? All right, oh, sorry, Councilman Nowakowski, please.
Just a quick comment is that, just some clarification. Our contract is up, our existing contract for our cabling and our phone system, right?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, our existing cabling, there is no contract for that. It just exists in the building as it was installed when it was. What we're talking about in terms of contracts expiring is really the support of the phone system itself. Those contracts are expiring. Also the fact that our third-party contractor, their existing contract to do the maintenance expires in 2016. And then the fact that we can no longer get parts for the system because it was created in 1988.
So a lot of that stuff is obsolete.
It really would be the equivalent of going to a salvage yard and just kind of rooting through whatever you could find.
So basically what we're looking at is if we don't renew this contract, if we don't basically rewire our building, we would actually end up crashing sometime. And we're talking about all the different departments in the city of Phoenix and all the services that we provide, right?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Councilman Nowakowski, that is absolutely correct. If we experience challenges with the phone system, we have no parts, and once we have no support, our system would indeed crash and die. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
And I agree with the chairman that we need to really examine all technology that's out there. I mean, we had a great summit. We had the individuals coming across, all the stakeholders throughout the city of Phoenix talking about how we can actually advance in technology. And I think this is a great opportunity for us as a city to really take that leadership role. And because of that, I mean, it's not easy spending money, but seeing the situation that we're in and seeing that how our employees are really operating with some computers that are really outdated, and most companies are actually tossing them out, and we're still using that system and not being able to communicate from different departments because of different softwares that we're using. It's a great opportunity for us to really come together and use software that's compatible to all offices and really start to communicate and get the biggest bang, not just in our system, but also of our workforce that we have in the city of Phoenix, and that's why I'll be supporting it.
Any other comments? All right, with that, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
The motion passes 3-1. Thank you very much for your work on this. This takes us now to the next item, which is item 7, Economic Development Strategy Review.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, in January of this year, I came to a policy session and discussed with you new tactics for economic development, and we are here today to tell you both where we're at, what are the next steps, and some new policy recommendations that we have for you. One of the great additions to our economic development program has been Chris Mackey. We are so excited that she made the decision to join the city and to help us advance the economic development program. And she's going to lead our conversation today. So, Chris?
Good morning, Chairman, Council members. Here today to talk to you about an economic development strategy that, working under Paul's leadership, the economic development team has put together. First, kind of just to discuss with you the core mission of economic development, which is to drive Phoenix as a powerhouse in job creation and economic development. As you know, economic development drives wealth in a community, which funds all the services that we enjoy. Those communities that have a strong economic development program really are more sustainable and livable The more projects you bring into a community, the greater services you can provide to your citizens. As we've looked at Phoenix's targeted industry sectors, we've made some tweaks in them over the last 90 days that we've been working on this analysis. Of course, strong focus on biosciences, advanced business services, and what I mean by that are data centers, financial services centers, customer care centers, those type of things. Advanced manufacturing, our international trade, our exporting, sustainable industries. Under information technology, we'd have certainly software, and then emerging enterprises, which are entrepreneurial efforts. As Paul spoke about, into the early 2014, Paul came forward with a broad strategy that introduced our position in the global economy, and that was to help existing employers, attract new employers, support entrepreneurship growth, encourage redevelopment, and pursue international trade. The strategic tactics are broad that we're going to talk about today, and will really help drive a sustainable economy. We kind of talked about them, and we'll go much more in detail as we go through. But as you'll notice, the last couple are ones that we're looking at: attract development, cultivate entrepreneurship, support community-based revitalization, but really building a high-performance economic development organization. If we can kind of drive our internal organization to being a leadership role, it'll help us in all of our efforts moving forward. As we look at our 15-16 performance measurements, you'll see they are pretty bold. As Paul tells me, you shoot for the fences, and that's where we're aiming for. So if we look at our jobs created, what economic development anticipates creating: 6,000 jobs in our retention expansion, 4,000 new jobs into the community in 15-16. Average salary in that year of $45,000. We anticipate driving that up over time, but it'll take a few years as we move into some of these new sectors. Going from our businesses, our retention expansion visits in our businesses we assist, 500 this coming up year. Job seekers through our workforce area of 37,000, and job seekers trained of 1,500 through our programs. How does Phoenix compete? And I, of course, was one of the people competing against you, so I kind of have an insider track on how that works. Why we've lost projects within our market is we debriefed on projects we've lost, and we've looked at projects that we didn't succeed in attracting or came in second place. The market really demands viable sites with infrastructure that companies want. That really is what it comes down to. What can we do to correct that? Really position Phoenix as a national, international player in corporate decisions. And what I mean by that is alerting site selectors, talking to developers, putting in infrastructure, working with city council, driving that conversation and creating a position where Phoenix is known as the 6th largest city in economic development. Maybe we'll move ourselves up a few as well. Attraction of the knowledge workforce is key to our economic success, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail in just a moment. Drive Phoenix's brand and competitive position, not only in the local market, but nationally and internationally as well, and we'll talk about that strategy. Assist with press for Phoenix companies that are easily identifiable. So what I mean by that, and we'll talk about that in detail in a minute, is there's so many cool things going on with our companies here in Phoenix. We should be celebrating and singing and getting that information out. Now people say, well, you're tying the companies, you're doing work for the companies. No, what we're doing is elevating Phoenix's brand on what goes on in this market. Our challenges to resolve, and it's been interesting for me coming from a greenfield development site, and that's what I'm used to, is finding how challenging some of this is to work with. It was amazing for me to learn that approximately 1/3 of our sites are infill or redevelopment sites that require some type of remediation or some type of infrastructure. It was a staggering number to me when I found that out. Many large land sites that are our most key and desirable land sites are not in the control of private development. They're in the control of other agencies that can make it challenging for companies to select them as a location decision. Some of our key employment corridors are showing their age, and they do need some redevelopment. They need infrastructure. They might need landscaping improvements to make them more attractive. They don't show as well as they could potentially show. If we look at corporate real estate decision makers, their view of Phoenix really does need some attention. Their opinion of Phoenix is they either have no opinion, or it's modest or a slightly negative opinion of Phoenix as a market to do business in. A unified branding campaign. What we've found as we've been looking, as we've worked and we've dug, as the team has worked closely together, we've found that Phoenix doesn't have a consistent communication strategy. It's one of the quietest big cities that you'll find nationally, and our team aims to change that working with our PIO department. In other words, we're going to have gentle pressure applied relentlessly on our brand strategy. Educational attainment of the city is below that of our competition, and that challenge can be addressed in a number of ways that we'll talk about in just a moment. Our competitive position, we plan to bring our action, we have an action plan that we've created working internally with our team, and it's available. Paul's finishing his review of it and making sure it meets his standards, and we'll finish our last comments and get it out to council. We aim to have that completed here in November, and we'll update that annually. The next update will be to you in July of 2015. March 2015, the competitive analysis that you approved today, and I think each of you, as you read through, completely understood what we were working at, but really doing an overall strategic analysis of our key competitor markets. How do we compete? What are our competitive advantages? What are they saying about us? And what could we be changing things? And doing some reverse engineering in some of our location decisions, our most recent location decisions. Why did they choose Phoenix? And interviewing about 30 of our existing CEOs to determine why did they choose Phoenix? What does their workforce think? What can we do to maintain them here and their views of Phoenix? That won't be a static proposition. We'll be updating that analysis quarterly on an internal basis once we have our original document. And with GPEC being able to tap into that key resource, that research that exists there, they have a depth of research that I think perhaps we could use more effectively, and a closer collaboration with some of our partners. We're now going to go in and address all 5 of the tactics that Paul addressed with you in January, and kind of our positions and outcomes that we see. The first is to invest in strategic land use planning and make strategic capital infrastructure investments to ensure that we have shovel-ready sites. Our outcome by the end of fiscal year 2016, so instead of trying to position it for the next 6 months and then come back to you for the next year, what you'll be seeing is our view over the next 18 months, and then we'll come back to you with another plan, is to create 25 new greenfield or redevelopment sites within the city of Phoenix, really to identify those key economic development sites in each employment corridor. I've been visiting with each one of you and your staff to talk about what you see as your priorities, what you and your constituents see as your most important sites, and what we found is we're pretty closely aligned in what we saw as those redevelopment sites. Economic development staff will be working with key city staff to identify infrastructure required for each of those sites. We'll be working with Planning and Development Department and landowners to identify zoning and land use to support flexible employment categories. As we have companies come forward, we don't want to have to say time out, we need 6 months to rezone a site. We want to be ready to go and respond with whatever they need. Consider improvement districts where they make sense to put in significant amounts of infrastructure, and that's particularly in some of those large land tracts in some of your districts and employment corridors that have big acreage that will need to be developed. Attract speculative development so we can remain competitive for our key market sectors. If we look at what our competition in our suburbs are looking at, or our other markets we compete against, Denver, Salt Lake, Austin, they're newer markets, they've kept their markets fresh, and there are new buildings that can respond very quickly to today's key environment. And revitalize some of our major retail corridors. While I absolutely agree that retail does not drive high wage value jobs, it does drive sales tax, which is a key feeder into our general fund. And there are some opportunities we'll talk about in a moment for some redevelopments that we are moving forward with. We'll need to strategically invest in infrastructure to assist in those key developments as we move forward. Cities that don't have shovel-ready sites are often overlooked. They don't make the list, and it's all about making and staying viable economic development options for key projects moving forward. Second tactic is to commit resources to support new job creation and really to competitively position Phoenix in our pursuit for high-value, high-wage jobs. We want to attract employers to Phoenix in those high-impact, high-growth industries. Our outcome by fiscal year 2016, and just to show you a scale of the difference, whereas we're trying to move the needle, and that's as Paul identified to me, we want to show how we're going to move the needle. We'll attract 50 new employers to Phoenix. We did 11 in fiscal year 14. 500 retention expansion visits in 15. We did 206 in 14. And the ways that we'll really move forward in elevating our game and moving that needle is to more actively engage with our regional and state partners, but they shouldn't be driving our conversation. Phoenix should be driving the conversation about economic development in Phoenix. They should be our partner and they should be supporting us, and that's the way that we'll be moving forward. We'll be participating in not less than 10 prospect trip and sales missions to get Phoenix out as a key competitor and a new market within this activity. Conduct 15 outreach campaigns to direct targeted industry groups. What I mean by that are in biosciences, in advanced manufacturing, in aerospace and aviation, reaching out to those industry sectors. They all have associations where we can get in front of them and present to them. We'll be more closely engaging with our key real estate partners. We'll do not less than 12 meetings with developers, architects, engineers, brokers, site selectors on a monthly basis. Under Hank Marshall's leadership, we'll be doubling our export proposition with our companies. In Mexico, we plan to double our exports by 2020, globally by 2025. Takes a little bit longer to move that initiative moving forward, but in your meeting coming up in December, we'll be bringing a new export initiative forward to you at that time. We'll be doubling the membership of our very successful industry sector partnerships. Not only that, though, as we move forward, when we're working with companies, one of the key differences we can make is letting a company talk turkey to another company. I can be the salesperson and the cheerleader for Phoenix all I want, but when they can talk to someone who's actually working in this market, it really drives the value proposition and their identification into the Phoenix market. So we've identified one of our staff members who has an HR background who will be setting up 50 human resources visits with leadership and going out and talking to them, so then they're positioned when we need to call quickly for a meeting because we've got a company coming in and they want to meet with 5 HR individuals within their strategy sector to be moving that forward. We can make those key calls and we don't have to kind of fumble through that process. Tactic 3 is to cultivate our entrepreneurship and emerging technologies. 1,000 makers and startups by 6:30 of 16, 5,000 within 5 years. Councilman Valenzuela has been key in really working with us and leading moving forward on those entrepreneurship movements. On our action items, it's really to expand our entrepreneurship ecosystem. Retaining our talent is going to be key. There's 110 entrepreneurship programs within ASU alone, let alone our community colleges system and University of Arizona and others. Retaining that talent and keeping them on a local basis is going to be critically important. Encourage private fundraising of our marketplace. 50 placements to market and brand Phoenix as a key market. What we mean by that, and Paul said it jokingly, we've taken it as a challenge. In the middle of the winter when it's raining in Seattle, we're going to drive a billboard or a bus campaign that says Phoenix wants your startups. Really getting out there with some bold moves. As you know, we have the Hive and expanding our entrepreneurship movements into the other markets and participate in prospect and trade shows. People often say, why all this focus on entrepreneurship? Does this really make sense? You've got these large corporations that can make a bigger bite in a more quick manner. In the interest of time, though, I really would like to tell you a short, quick story as to why this is so important. And then a follow-up. We're talking about raising the educational attainment of our city. And we can do that through elevating our schools and attracting higher education. But one of the easiest ways to do that is to attract the knowledge industry. And the knowledge industry wants to come to be near a cool, local, vibrant, entrepreneurship, innovative place. That's where they want to raise their kids. That's where they want to grow up. That's where they want to drive their locational brand decisions in their community. We can so quickly elevate the educational attainment by attracting that workforce who already brings with it that strong leadership. But you look at why working with these early stage companies is so important, and I'll talk about one that's very near and dear to my heart. In the late 1970s, a leadership from Chandler and the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce heard about this early stage company based out of California, and they were looking for an expansion site somewhere in the West. Chandler leadership and Phoenix leadership went in partnership together to California and met with this company. That company found what they were looking for at this location. It was a very 10-year-old company at the time, decided on a 300-acre land site in Chandler. That company was Intel. At the time, it was a very small company. City made significant infrastructure investments. They, working in partnership with the City of Phoenix, created a foreign trade zone, brought in workforce training, did some amazing things for this very new semiconductor, very new microchip technology. That company has since expanded over and over. So $21 billion investment into the region economy alone just since 1996, has 12,000 jobs whose average wage is $130,000. They're ingrained in the community, and they invest $2.6 billion in economic impact into this region annually. What that means, we're all excited about the Super Bowl, but that company alone in economic impact is like winning a Super Bowl every 8 weeks. That's why it's so important to focus on emerging technologies. You're not always going to find the next one coming out of a garage, but there will be those that will be the next Intel. Tactic 4, pursue redevelopment opportunities, particularly here in the city center core. 5 issuances of RFPs over the next 18 months of city-owned land sites right here in downtown. Repositioning 3 buildings in Midtown as technology plays. If you look at those buildings and you go into the spaces, they're looking a little long in the tooth, kind of 1970s called, and they want their office space back. It's not what the market is looking for today. We're working closely with brokers and ownership to fix that. Investing 500,000 square feet in new higher education, really repositioning Central Phoenix as the new urban tech market on the warehouse district and functionally obsolete buildings. And then on our 4th tactic, pursue additional redevelopment opportunities for adaptive reuse of retail and encourage redevelopment of 25 existing properties and reduce our vacancy rate in retail by at least 300,000 square feet over the next 18 months. Our 5th and final tactic is develop a new marketing strategy to sell Phoenix. We are currently working on, with PIO and Deborah Ostreicher, working on a marketing and branding strategy that we'll be ready to bring forward in January. Our community profile under Diane Nakagawa's leadership is nearly complete. We'll have beautiful marketing materials and online website materials for you very shortly. A robust economic development, Debbie Cotton is assisting us with. We currently do about 3,300 unique hits a month today on the economic development website. We're planning to drive that to 75,000 unique hits a year by 2016. We'll be creating a cohesive message and doing not less than 1,000 placements of our completed materials and developing that press release campaign as we move forward. Now, how are we going to do that? What staff would like to have you consider today, just to have you start thinking about, is to create a strategic economic development fund. That fund would help us with our infrastructure, our job training and creation, our entrepreneurial efforts, and our marketing program. The way we would propose you consider doing this would be through a 50% use of a strategic economic development fund for sales tax revenues generated only by projects that economic development drives into this market. So if we don't bring them in, we wouldn't have the sales tax to begin with. We would run that for a 5-year duration of each project. So let's say that, I'm going to make this up, we bring in a 500,000 square foot industrial manufacturer, and that number is $1 million of sales tax a year over a 5-year period. General fund would get $500,000. Our strategic economic development fund would get $500,000 for a 5-year period. At the end of the 5 years, all of it would go into the general fund. This would be only net new sales tax. So if a company exists here today and it expands, only the difference of the expansion would go into the fund, so the general fund wouldn't see any challenges moving forward. And this would be as executed or defined and confirmed by Budget and Research. City Council, of course, would approve any expenditures consistent with your existing policies. We would estimate the first year of revenues between $2 and $3 million, and City Council would set all of our annual policy decisions about the use. It allows quality job growth to pay for itself to the extent only that job growth occurs. What we would propose, and though these would not burden the general fund at all, is to fund 3 new staff positions that would be necessary to drive this new and exciting economic development strategy. It would be a person in marketing and 2 new additional people in attraction. In the future, although we absolutely can make no guarantees, our goal would be that this is such a successful strategy that in the future we could be back to talk to you about how to reduce economic development's burden, existing burden on the general fund. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you might have. I apologize for rushing through, but being respectful of your time.
We appreciate it. Have a full agenda today. Questions or comments from my colleagues? Councilor Nowakowski.
I like to say, wow. We're starting to look like the sixth largest city in the country now. I mean, it's great that we're telling our story, but what I like about it is that you're getting the top 30 CEOs of the city of Phoenix to tell our story. It's not us bragging, it's other people telling our story. And I like that peers working with peers. I think that really is effective, and I think we do need to get those shovel-ready projects, and we need to make sure that the infrastructure is there for those companies that are going to relocate to our city. And I can only imagine what Phoenix is going to look like in 10 years from now. I mean, when you fly into Sky Harbor, you can tell it's a medium-sized city, but we're going to be a big-sized city in the near future. And thank you for your leadership and all these wonderful ideas. I think we're going in the right direction, and we just got to keep up with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski. I would echo those comments. This is what we've been waiting for. This is what many of us have been looking for on the council, so I'm very excited about this. I love the idea of the strategic fund. Basically what it is for the rest of the city, it's like the downtown fund that we've had for years, which, you know, my response to that is it's about time. We have had a lot of struggles, as you've kind of alluded to. And I'm ready for those to be over. I'm ready for us to start winning. And here's something I want to underline. I think a lot of, and Councilor Nowakowski's comment about the top CEOs made me think of this. We have got to break through politics, and we have an opportunity with this new governor to work with him. And I don't want to hear about anyone here, letting politics stand in the way. If he succeeds with his efforts, because again, how often do you have someone with and I'm not trying to make a speech for our incoming governor, but he can talk to these CEOs, and so we need to work with him and his administration hand in hand. I think we have a wonderful opportunity here, and I think, Christine, the plan you've set forward would work very well with the Arizona Commerce Authority, with GPEC, and the things that the new governor is going to do. So I'm excited about this, and I'm here to be very supportive of everything that's been put forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Valenzuela.
Thank you. What can I say? What a steal to have Chris Mackey with us to go along with an already talented group led by Paul Blue there. I appreciate staff's diligence and just working very hard, aiming high, and finding new innovative ways to advance our economy. I'm glad that entrepreneurship is becoming a key pillar of success for Phoenix, for our economy. We all have been advocating for a long time, and strongly believe that the timing is right to start advancing specific initiatives to grow this sector for our local economy. Investment in our economy and community is absolutely necessary. Infrastructure, training, marketing, and entrepreneurship are all very important, and if we wish to advance our community. I truly believe that if we want to grow wages and opportunity in our community, we must continue to invest in Phoenix. And I like these types of investments that are mentioned, because they're focused in activity that is specific to Phoenix, infrastructure we will own, training of our citizens, and building a Phoenix ecosystem for entrepreneurship. We will all be investing in things that broadly stay in Phoenix. And the idea that we have economic development projects, an economic development project fund for the next project is very interesting, and it's just an attractive notion. I believe that this approach, or something close to it, should be pursued in more detail, and I look forward to hearing more about this in upcoming meetings. And I can't tell you how excited I am as we move forward. And I know that you've all had an opportunity to welcome Ms. Chris Mackey, but once again, it's great to give her some time talk about this plan on television. It's archived. We can let people know to pull it up and just watch some of the presentations, some of the ideas that anyone would be excited, and I'm certainly one of them.
Thank you, Councilman. Just like we had a lot of stretch goals set on the environment earlier, you've set a lot of stretch goals for economic development today, so thank you very much. Unless there's anything else, item 10, we're unfortunately going to have to continue that until our next meeting so that we can have Mr. Dahoney give us a brief discussion of CORE, which is item 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. We're going to spend just a few minutes with you talking about CORE today. This will, again, help in our efforts to make CORE more real to people, to move it more from an abstract concept to something that's actually making a difference day in and day out in terms of our operation. So in terms of the next phase of what's coming from CORE, we're continuing to work with individual departments regarding their operations to have them look at the way that they do their business to see if there are better ways to do it. We will continue to work with individual departments to develop a set of metrics that we can use to measure ourselves by, things that would be relevant to the public. We are working in concert with the Budget and Research Department on expense reductions, and we'll be making a presentation in concert with BNR at a meeting next month at Policy. We are going to spend the bulk of our next period of time working on both rethinking some work processes that departments have identified as being really contrary to the core of this committee, something that's cumbersome, that's not efficient, and is something that needs to be overhauled, similar to what we were talking about with our phone system earlier. And that extends to reviewing select legislative items that we have that have been passed that are perhaps dated and need to be reviewed. We have formed an implementation team. The screen shows you who they are. They come from across the government. Lisa Takata and I will be co-chairing this effort and working with these individuals to sort of move from the 50,000-foot level of CORE and down into the weeds on the items that I just mentioned. We'll have our organizational meeting next week, and then we will begin our work in earnest in January of 2015. So the meeting next week is to get acquainted and to make sure all the members have a background, the same baseline of information in order for us to go forward. We've talked about this before. There are some items in the charter. We've got some things in the administrative regs. There's some regulations that need to be revisited, some policies. And what we need to do with the implementation team is go through a very thorough vetting process. So if someone says something needs to be amended, something needs to be repealed, something needs to be rewritten, then we have to get into the weeds to see exactly what are we talking about. And we will do that with each item. We will have the departments that are impacted by the policies or ordinances or regs to come in front of the implementation team so we can have a discussion about it. We will invite other departments who may somehow touch a process somewhere along the way so that we get their input. And then we want to make a business case that we can bring to the appropriate subcommittee and actually show you, here's what the language currently says, here's the impact that it currently has, here's the language that we're suggesting that we amend to, and here's the difference that we think it would make. Some of the examples of things that we're talking about and things we'll be looking at, there's been a number of requests to get our system as a system of government to the point where we have electronic signatures instead of all of the manual paper pushing that we currently do. In some instances, we're just shoving paper through, which takes more time, slows things down. If you buy in and accept the business notion that time is money, then some of the steps that we do can be removed. We have a city charter requirement that in some instances prohibits paying for things electronically. Probably when that was written, it seemed like a good idea. Today, it does not. We've got an ordinance that on the one hand restricts the trees and shrub trimmings in the right-of-way, but we have another ordinance that requires it. So again, at the time the ordinance were passed, they were probably dealing with a specific set of circumstances, and we want to sort of modernize or coordinate those things better. The time frame that we estimate that the implementation team will be together is 18 to 24 months, and then we'll assess where we are and see what work remains to be done. The work environment that we're in, we've got financial realities that we have to accept. We don't necessarily have to like it, but we have to live with it. We've got some institutional knowledge loss that we're experiencing. So this system was poised to realize a mass exodus if the election had gone a certain way. Well, it didn't, but a number of people have decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and go anyway. So we do have people walking out the door that have been here for a long time, and it's hard to replace that knowledge loss. And then we've got some systems changes that we're trying to implement, and the implementation team will serve as a pulse check for some of that. An example is e-procurement. We're trying to upgrade our e-procurement, or actually institute it, to go live next spring. It's going to have a wide impact. It's going to save us money. It's going to save us steps. And we'll use the implementation team to sort of check in with that to sort of make sure it's on par. We're doing a similar effort with collections. We're trying to stabilize, standardize the way we do collections in the government through the leadership of the Director of Finance. And so we'll also work with that as well. So what we wanted to do today is just give you a snapshot to make it sort of plain for people, give examples of what we're trying to do, and to make sure that we periodically check in with your committee, Mr. Chairman, so you know kind of where we are, what we're looking at. And in the brief few minutes, that's it.
Excellent. Questions or comments from my colleagues? Councilor Nowakowski.
You know, I have questions. You talked about short-term. What is short-term? Is that 18 months that you described, or what would you consider short-term?
Well, the 18 to 24 months is the length of time we think that the committee will need to do its work. But once we get into 2015, as soon as we develop a business case for something, we'll start bringing that right away to the appropriate subcommittees. And one of the things we wanted to reiterate again today, this will be a fully transparent initiative. And so anything that we're proposing will come forward and be debated in the light of day, and we will accept your direction up or down.
And basically, we talked about policy and maybe reorganizing some of our ordinances that we have in the city of Phoenix.
Yes, sir.
And then taking that through the subcommittees and some of your core changes. My concern is this, is that the majority of us don't sit on those subcommittees. I really like to see this more at the policy or even at a work study or so, that we can all have input on it. Because I think that, for example, what happened at Channel 11, I mean, impacted some of us, but not all of us. And I would have wished to know some of those changes were coming up the pipeline so that we could have prepared ourselves for that. So I think it's important that sometimes we're the policy makers here. And I think it's important that we have these work studies maybe as a whole, so we can engage and you can get an aspect of what we're all thinking. Because when you bring it to the subcommittee, it's kind of more of a snapshot of what's going on in those districts. Because right now we have 4 districts being represented, so you have half the city, but then the other half you're not sure. So I think that's, if we can look at maybe bringing back those work studies maybe and bringing the core suggestions to that. That's just a suggestion. I'm not sure.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Nowakowski, our intent is to go to the subcommittee as a first step based on the topic.
Right.
But then it would certainly go to the full council and policy so that everybody can see it and weigh in. The things that we will be bringing, for the most part, will not necessarily be time sensitive where it has to be reacted to very quickly. So there would be an opportunity for the full council to weigh in before anything is changed.
And the other concern I have is just the morale of our employees, because we're at the bone of operations right now. There's nothing you can really cut. I mean, we've cut in most of all of the excess that we had, when it comes to vehicles, it comes to computers and buildings and all that. So now we're really looking at the core being employees, which I believe would probably be the biggest savings that we would have. So I think that I would like to be very sensitive and at the same time bring in making sure that the employees have some type of vested interest in this decision making, that it's not being, these decisions aren't being made by just a couple individuals in a room saying it makes sense on paper, but when you go out there and you actually try to implement it, it doesn't work. So those are the kind of concerns that I have, is that we have such a big operation that sometimes on paper it looks easy, but then when you actually try to implement it, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Your point's well taken, sir.
Thank you.
If my colleagues don't mind, actually, that was a great segue for a public comment we have for Mr. Louis Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the City Council, City Manager. Mr. Nowakowski, Councilman Nowakowski, you just hit it right on the dot. This process needs to be vetted out. We can keep saying we have to reduce, but if you pay attention to page 50 of this report, it says trying to maintain all service levels even after repeated resource reductions is not sustainable or a winning solution. Like Councilman Nowakowski just stated, we've cut to the bone. We've cut to the bone. Our staffing levels are even beyond 40 years. That comment was made, about I think in 2011, maybe 2010, about the lowest staffing levels in 40 years. I agree with Mr. Mahoney about trying to improve some of the processes, going electronic. Perfect example is yesterday, I sent this appeal for an employee electronically, and it was denied by the City of Phoenix, telling me, oh, we can't accept that electronically. You have to personally bring it in or mail it in. So this is just a perfect example of we have to improve the processes.
We're adding a lot of cable, so hopefully we can do that electronically.
Yes. Well, maybe if we hang a cable from the office to the city, I'll just push it that way. But anyways, we do, this core process, we do want to be involved, because again, at the end of the day, the employees and the employees who are in the field, in the offices, they know a lot of the ideas that have to be, taken into consideration. But like what you said, if they're not involved in the process, then, by the time some committee comes up with a report, it's a little bit too late to actually have some meaningful discussion. So, that's just about all I have to say. But to Councilman, Vice Mayor Waring, earlier you stated about some of the retrofitting of stuff that, whether the city was doing that or not. Currently, Public Works under Christine Smith right here, that is being done. That on a daily basis, the facilities Division of Public Works has a energy division that does retrofitting. Most of it is done by the private sector, but that is being done on a daily basis. So just wanted to give you that information. So thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions from my colleagues? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would just
City
add one
Manager.
example that Mr. Mahoney brought up, and this subcommittee would be the place for it. So the city charter today requires us to handwrite warrants, checks. And so we'll go through a rigmarole of writing them, sending electronically, and then destroying the checks so we comply with the charter. That's the kind of thing that we would want to bring to this subcommittee to discuss a charter amendment, an alternative, and vet that out here to see if it's something worthy of taking to the voters and putting on a citywide ballot. So that's one really quick example where, and probably in January already, we're going to bring the finance department here, we're going to explain it, talk about it, have you give us feedback, and then if you think that that's something we can do, we would go forward to the council for further discussion and putting that on the ballot. But that's just one example of a process that's like from 1950 that doesn't make sense today.
You know, the other thing too is I don't mind looking at a fee for service when it comes to the different services that we provide within the city of Phoenix, and then subsidizing different individuals that are maybe in a free lunch program or low income. But I think that we need to start thinking differently than what we've been thinking in the past. And I think this core group is a great opportunity for us to start looking at those ways of thinking, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, one thing, I'm not looking for an answer here, but I think it's something that we need to look at, and I assume you're looking at, is this core working group. How do they interact and interface with the Innovation and Efficiency Task Force? And is there overlap? Should they be folded into one? I mean, I think that's something we really need to, and I assume you probably are already looking at that, so that we're not having, you know, duplication of efforts here. And then the final thing, just briefly, I would touch on, there was some comments made, Mr. Dohoney, when you presented to the full council on CORE about strategic plan. You know, this is not a strategic plan. I think you would agree with that, correct?
Yes, I would.
But I think if we were to have a strategic plan, would that be something that would be helpful and instructive as this group moves forward over the next 18 to 24 months?
It would be helpful, but the strategic plan would be taking a broad look at the direction of where the government's going. We're really not venturing into that area with this. We're looking at what's happening here day to day and what, you know, how we can improve it. But if the council saw fit to do a strategic plan, it certainly would benefit all of us. We would have no issue with it.
And probably there's so much there's so much you could possibly work on. It might help you to prioritize a bit in what the efforts were of CORE in this working group.
Yes, sir.
Great. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much for your work and everyone who's involved. I just wanted to backtrack for a second. On item 7, we had David Roderick from Downtown Phoenix Partnership. I apologize. He had a card here, not to speak, but in favor of item 7. So just for the record, wanted to make sure that that was clear. And now that takes us to item 11, called to the public. No cards for that. So then item 12, future agenda items. We have a list of future agenda items for the council members here. We've got a full plate moving forward and a lot of things that we talked about today. So to the extent that there are additional items that ought to be on here based upon motions that were passed and approved by this subcommittee, we would ask that you do that, Councilman Nowakowski.
You know, I like to see in the future a one ID where you don't have to carry around a library card, a card that you need to use our Parks and Rec, or even our buses. So how can we create a one card for all the different services that we provide as a city of Phoenix? And this way it'll be easier for young people, older people to actually have just one card instead of carrying 3 or 4 different cards in their wallets or pockets or purses.
Are you implying it's only us middle-aged people who want to carry multiple cards in their wallet? I don't understand where you're going with that, but I thought they had told me they were giving a presentation or some such at the council meeting.
So
today, they were doing the library cards today, but
so interestingly, you must be reading my mind, Councilor Nowakowski, because I'm going to talk, here, breaking news, right? I'm going to talk about this on the library card item. I got a briefing on it yesterday.
Yeah,
so I think maybe that your timing's perfect, that we might, based upon some of our comments, we're going to give it the formal meeting. It might make sense, absolutely. And I'll ask for that, consistent with what you've just asked, that this come back, that very issue come to the subcommittee in the future, because I think there are some great efficiencies, potential cost savings of that concept. So thank you. Any other future agenda items? All right, well, if we don't have anything else with that, meeting is adjourned.